At exactly 11:59 every night, the old town of Marloth slipped into a strange kind of silence. The kind that didn't feel natural. The kind that felt like the air itself was holding its breath. And for years people whispered about the giant rust-covered tower clock standing in the middle of the empty square, a relic from the 1800s that no one had touched in decades because of an old rule carved beneath it. Do not be present when the clock stops at 12. Most people laughed it off, treating it like some old superstition, but not Elena, a 24-year-old journalism student who had a habit of poking her nose into things she shouldn't. She had grown up hearing her grandmother say that when the clock stops, the dead walk backwards, searching for the one who stole their hour. Elena never believed it, until the night she decided to test it herself. She arrived in Marloth Square with her camera, her jacket zipped to her chin, because the air had turned strangely cold, like the breeze was slipping out of a freezer. The hands of the tower clock crawled to 11:59, and Elena lifted her camera, whispering to herself that fear was nothing more than adrenaline with bad PR. But the moment the minute hand quivered, the entire town seemed to shift. Lights in the empty houses flickered even though there was no electricity. The cobblestones trembled faintly like something massive was stretching beneath the town, and Elena felt a pressure behind her. A heavy presence, standing too close though nothing was there. At 12 o'clock, the clock's gears groaned like an animal in pain, and then they stopped with a sharp metallic click that echoed through Marloth like a scream. And instantly, Elena smelled something, like old soil from a graveyard mixed with burnt hair. She turned around and froze. Shadows were standing upright, not cast on the ground, not connected to anything, just standing. They looked human, but wrong. Thin outlines made of moving darkness, their edges flickering like torn film. And they were all facing her. Elena stepped back, but the shadows mirrored her, as though they were reflecting her own movement, but a second too late. She kept filming, because fear made her stubborn, and through the camera lens, their faces became visible. Faces that weren't visible to the naked eye. Pale, blurry, hollow-eyed faces pressed against their shadow bodies like souls trapped in ink, and their mouths opened in silent screams. Elena's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped her camera. One shadow stepped forward, and the temperature plummeted. Its head tilted unnaturally, cracking like old wood, and its hollow features shifted into a face Elena recognized from an old missing person poster. The boy who vanished 10 years ago when he dared his friends to stay in the square until midnight. Elena stumbled backward, whispering that this couldn't be real, that this had to be some trick of adrenaline. But then another shadow stepped forward, then another, and soon the entire square was closing in on her with silent, jerky movements like broken puppets. She squeezed her eyes shut and bolted toward the alleyway behind the clock tower. But the ground beneath her feet rippled, not like dirt or stone, but like stretched skin. Alive, breathing, pulsing with every second the clock remained frozen at 12. She fell hard, scraping her elbow. But when she looked up, she froze. The alley was bending, literally bending, like a tunnel of melted metal curling inward. At the end of it stood a figure, tall, draped in what looked like tattered morning clothes from the 1800s, face hidden, posture unnaturally straight. It didn't walk. It glided. Elena tried to run the other way, but the shadows blocked her, merging to form a single tall mass of darkness, its face shifting through dozens of lost townsfolk. Her heartbeat became painful, like something inside her chest was trying to claw its way out. The cloaked figure raised a skeletal hand, and suddenly time stuttered. The air trembled. Her breath froze mid-exhale, and the world flickered like an old TV switching channels. She was no longer in the alley. She was standing in the past, Marloth Square, exactly as it had looked more than a century ago. Lanterns lit the streets, carriages stood outside shops, and the clock tower was brand new, polished and golden. But the square was full of people dressed in black, heads bowed, surrounding a coffin placed at the base of the clock tower. A man with a long beard hammered a plaque into the stone. Do not be present when the clock stops at 12. Elena's breath hitched as she moved closer. The coffin began to rattle. People screamed and scattered. The coffin burst open, and a young man, gaunt and shrieking, crawled out, hands mangled, eyes blood red. He grabbed the nearest person and whispered something before collapsing. Elena leaned closer to hear the words through the ghostly echo. He steals an hour every night. Stop him before he stops you. The young man died instantly. The clock struck 12. and all the mourners' shadows twisted into horrid forms. Suddenly Elena was yanked back into the present like someone had hooked her spine. She collapsed on the cobblestones, gasping, her head spinning. The cloaked figure now stood inches from her. It lifted its hood. Its face wasn't human. It was a smooth, featureless surface like polished bone, and in the center was a single clock hand embedded deep, ticking backward. Its voice wasn't a voice, but the scraping of metal. "Give the hour back." Elena didn't understand. The figure raised its hand again, and the camera screen lit up with an image. Her own grandmother standing next to the clock tower decades ago, placing something into a hidden slot behind the gears. A stolen hour. A stolen life. A curse passed down. The shadows closed in, whispering in dozens of voices, "Return what was taken." Elena crawled forward, searching behind the clock until her fingers hit a loose panel. She opened it. Inside was an old silver pocket watch, her grandmother's name engraved on it. The watch ticked normally. She held it up. The cloaked figure extended a bony hand, and the shadows hissed violently. Elena hesitated, thinking maybe giving it back would end everything. But something inside her felt wrong. Too easy. Too neat. Her grandmother had once told her, not everything stolen deserves returning. Elena smashed the pocket watch against the clock tower with all her strength. Time screamed. Every shadow exploded into smoke. The cloaked figure shrieked, its body unraveling like cloth caught in a hurricane. The ground convulsed. The tower clock spun wildly, backward, forward, losing seconds, stealing minutes, vomiting hours. Elena covered her ears as the air filled with 1,000 overlapping voices. And then silence. Thick, heavy silence. The clock struck 12 once more, and then began ticking forward again. The square was empty. No shadows. No cold air. No bending alleyways. Just Elena, shaking, covered in dust, heart hammering. The town lights flickered on for the first time in decades. She stumbled home and didn't sleep for 3 days. When she finally checked her camera, the footage was corrupted except for one frame frozen at the exact moment the clock stopped, showing the cloaked figure standing behind her, its bony hand reaching toward her shoulder. She uploaded the story online, warning people never to test old rules. She moved out of Marloth. She tried to forget, but every night, without fail, her bedroom clock stops at 12, and something knocks once on her door.